Number 10. Hellstrom. Hellstrom is Damon Hellstrom, also sometimes going by the name Damon Hellstorm, the son of Satan. His initial appearance in Marvel Comics was shrouded in controversy due to him being marked as, well, the son of the devil. But in recent years, this all died down with the ultimate dissolution of the Comic Code Authority, which made moral judgment calls on what subject matter could be covered or touched upon, even in comics, a lot less controversial, let's just say, for the most part. Damon's father might not actually be the devil, as a few in Marvel Comics have made claims to this title. But either way, he still has become the ruler of at least a Hell Dimension, thanks to his birthright. While Damon is not known for appearing on the main Avengers team, he is known for being married to a fellow Avenger in the past, Hellcat, and has been a member of the Savage Avengers, which is why I'm counting him here. Although, lately, I feel like he's been a little less hero-y in the comics. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Do it, it's good for you. You know what people say? An apple a day keeps the doctor away, a like a day keeps me at bay from telling you all of that all the time. Number 9. Hellcat. We don't talk about Patsy Walker Hellcat that often on Top 10 Nerd, but lately, I don't know, I've just been in kinda like a Hellcat kind of mood, I guess. Hellcat is definitely a hero who's overlooked on the Avengers roster, and honestly, her history has granted her some pretty unique and fun powers. I had fun looking back into Hellcat's past to be like, oh yeah, she has all these cool things. She has some magical abilities, including the ability to basically like dodge magic and see through illusions, making her hard to target for any magic users. She even can tap into a demonic side of herself, calling upon demonic energy to give her a boost in certain realms and in certain instances. It's conditional, but still is pretty cool. Number 8. Hawkeye. Hawkeye is often thought of as just being a guy with some arrows who has really good aim. Kinda is that. But the fact that he's one of the few human members of the Avengers who doesn't have any superpowers per se, other than maybe like really enhanced eyesight, but not superpowered, just like abnormally good in ways that sometimes don't make sense, is exactly why he deserves more. More respect, more love, more admiration from us all. Hawkeye's Clint Barton doesn't have powers to rely on, and he still manages to keep up with the rest of his teammates. That's pretty awesome, I gotta say. I wasn't always a Clint fan, but I like Clint Barton, he's pretty cool. Number 7. Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman is another character who sometimes gets shafted in the comics, and she is a character who often gets compared to her seeming male counterpart, Spider-Man. Although truth be told, in canon continuity, Spider-Woman actually is older than Peter, and therefore in comic books history anyways, she was actually Spider-Woman before Peter was Spider-Man. She's canonically older, so I mean, she has a kid and everything. Something Peter has never really even been allowed to do permanently as a character, settle down, have kids, and grow up, all that good stuff. Although I would say that the fun of Jessica Drew is that she might be adulting really hard, but she never really fully grows up. She's always fun, sassy, and still figuring out so much of her life as she goes through it. To me, she's always been not only fun and badass, but also a relatable character, which is why I feel like she deserves to be featured more and get more respect from Marvel writers and fans alike, hence why she's on this list. Number 6. Black Knight. Honestly, probably one of the most underappreciated heroes we have as leader of the Avengers is the Black Knight. That's right, he was a leader of the Avengers, everyone. The Black Knight is a character who feels like lately he has faded into obscurity somewhat. I thought maybe with Kit Harington, made famous for his role as reluctant hero Jon Snow in the series Game of Thrones, playing Dane Whitman in the Eternals movie, we might actually see a resurgence of this character in the comics, and I was hyped for that, bolstered by his MCU appearance. However, while Dane's role as the Black Knight was teased at the end of the film with the appearance of his ancestral cursed sword, the Ebony Blade, we have yet to hear anything about the development of his announced series, and even Harington himself says he's basically in the dark on what Marvel's plans might be involving this character. So it seems like we might have to wait a bit longer for Black Knight to get the respect he so deserves from modern day fans, but hopefully that's coming at some point soon. Like, come on, Marvel, give me the Black Knight series, give me something, I want it. I feel like it could be cool and it would be very different. Number 5. Vision. Vision hasn't really had a major focus on him in some time. I love that he agreed to join up with Carol's Avengers, and as such is getting more time on the Avengers team in the present day, where he can once more be in the spotlight. But I do feel like there was a little period in there where Vision wasn't really doing much of anything. Vision might seem like a boring character devoid of personality because he's an android, but I would argue that at times he is maybe more human than the rest of his teammates. There are moments in the comics where for me he reminds me of another android that I know and love, Data, Data from Star Trek. Often it is his humanity that seems to motivate him, and also seems to be something that Viz struggles with as well, both in realizing its existence within himself and in accepting that human part of himself. Like, I mean, you gotta realize it before you can accept it, but even when I feel like he is kind of like, oh, maybe that's what's going on, I feel like he's not willing to fully embrace his humanity. I know he's an android, but sometimes he's just some really human stuff, guys. Number 4, She-Hulk. She-Hulk recently just had her own solo series, which as far as I've read thus far is amazing, by the way. I haven't finished it yet, but yeah. That series unfortunately just ended, and honestly it bums me out. She-Hulk is Jennifer Walters, who contrary to some very loud opinions, is not just a gender-swapped version of the Hulk. She is her own character in her own right, being Bruce Banner's cousin, who he came to shortly after his transformation into the Hulk, kinda seeking some help from Jen. However, during his visit, Jen was attacked by criminals who were worried that she, as a lawyer, was going to take down their boss. A very real threat, since Jen is actually a pretty great criminal lawyer, or was so at the time anyways. Now she's more into superhero lawyering, but still. After this attack on her life and Bruce being forced into giving her an emergency blood transfusion to save it, Jen Walters was forever changed into the sometimes monster, mostly hero, She-Hulk. She-Hulk has had a tumultuous path throughout the comics, having her highs and her lows. She has had long runs and short runs, and I'm kinda disappointed she isn't doing more these days, especially considering she also just got her own Disney Plus series, so you'd think that would help to give her character a comic book boost, but not really apparently. Her recent series didn't even make it to 20 issues sadly, and like I said, it honestly was great. I'm not fully up to date, but trust me, the issues I've read are really good. You should check it out. It's like classic She-Hulk. It felt so like original She-Hulk times. Ugh, so good. Number 3, Captain Marvel. I would argue that in a way, Carol is only recently starting to get her due. Captain Marvel has been and always will be one of the strongest Avengers around when it comes to the team. She is a cosmic powerhouse who has overcome a ton of adversity, but when it comes to her getting the respect that she deserves, she has had honestly a rough past. There was the whole thing with Marcus Immortus, see Avengers 197 through 200 for that fiasco, and then there was Civil War II, which saw Carol deal with some major character issues regarding how she was presented and written at that time. She became the villain of the story that should have honestly been equal in terms of which Avenger fans sided with, like in Civil War I. However, that isn't how Civil War II went down. Lately, however, Captain Marvel is finally getting the respect she deserves, as she has recently become the leader of the Avengers as we move into this new Avengers era. I am excited to see this kind of development happening for Carol, who has always been a strong and intelligent character who understands how to best utilize and motivate a team. So see her in that leadership role, it's perfect for me. Number 2, Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel has barely made any appearances recently in the comics, despite being one of the greatest powerhouses that we've ever seen. It's downright rude if you ask me. If I'm missing something amazing that happened with him lately as well, let me know, but I don't think he's really even been around since the end of the Defenders Beyond series. Before that, he appeared in Doctor Doom series, I believe, but my question is, when are we getting a Blue Marvel series? Huh? Marvel? Give us that Blue Marvel series right now, I want to read it. While Blue Marvel has not been a member of the main Avengers roster, which honestly also seems insane to me, he has been a member of the Mighty Avengers, which is why I'm including him on this list. And also because, come on, Marvel, give us a solo series, do it. Number 1, Scarlet Witch. Only now is Scarlet Witch Wanda Maximoff starting to get the story she has so long deserved. For years, Scarlet Witch was epically burdened by her past and haunted by all of her misdeeds and mistakes she had made along the way. M-Day has to have been one of the worst moments in mutant history, and it's all kinda cause of Wanda. M-Day happened in 2005 in the comics as a result of Scarlet Witch striking out at mutant kind after the events of House of M, where she attempted to create a reality where many heroes were happy. Fortunately, she is now finally moving to a place of healing, refusing to be defined by her past while running a magic shop in Lockhill, New York, with the help of MCU's Darcy, appearing in the comics for the first time. Here, finally, Wanda refused to let her past define her present self. Yes, finally. It's only taken us since 2005. It's taken so long to get to this point, but we're finally here. Ugh. Poor Wanda.
Number 10, Earth 5 Shazam. Earth 5, or Earth S, is a simpler, kinder world. A world that is more optimistic. A world where the heroes are seen as such with hardly any faults. Basically, this is the golden age of comics. Specifically, Fawcett Comics. Here, Captain Marvel is the main superhero, which gives the world the name Thunderworld. He and his family, Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, keep the world safe from everything from the Monster Society to aliens. I'm talking like Shazam is essentially taking the place of Superman as the premier superhero of Earth. This version of Shazam worked together alongside Superman and Overman to recruit the Supermen of the universe. They all worked together, led by Captain Marvel, to defeat Ultraman and weaken Mandrak, who was killed by the Green Lanterns. Number 9. Red Sun Batman. The Batman appearing in one of the greatest Superman stories ever, Red Sun, is not some crazy powerful amalgamation of characters. In fact, I'd say he's considerably weaker than a number of alternate Batman, but he is still Batman. In this dystopian Earth 30, where Superman became a tool of Stalin and his Soviet Union, Batman has become the most wanted man in Russia. As an adult, he became a blight on the Soviets and terrorized them all for revenge on Pyotr Rozlov, the captain of the police who brought the demise of Bruce's parents. He became an idol for those who wanted to oppose Superman and his regime. Eventually, Rozlov turned on Superman and convinced Batman to take down Superman. So, he stole Wonder Woman and bound her with her own lasso and drew Superman into a trap where he then bombarded the hero with simulated red sunlight. He forced the weakened Superman into a cellar to lock him away forever. But alas, Wonder Woman managed to destroy her lasso and remove the generator powering up the lamps, and unwilling to be locked up and lobotomized, Batman detonated a little boom boom that he'd implanted within his own small intestine. But before he passed away, Batman revealed to Superman the truth of Rozlov's treachery and got his revenge in a really roundabout way. Number 8. Flashpoint Cyborg. When Barry Allen Flash goes back in time to try and save his mom, he royally messes with the timeline, pretty much changing the whole DC universe. In this newly created timeline, Cyborg is America's greatest hero in place of Superman, based out of Detroit. He's the guy, but obviously he doesn't inspire the same kind of confidence as the Man of Steel because that would just be preposterous. When the Amazons and the Atlanteans go to war, Cyborg tries to gather a group of Earth's superhumans to help stop the conflict in its tracks, but it has already ravaged half of Europe. Thanks to Thomas Wayne, this timeline's Batman, refusing to join up, nobody else wants to join this group either. But then, superstar Barry Allen shows up and convinces Wayne otherwise, and the three set off to gather together an army of heroes. And they do, and it's awesome. Number 7, Dead Earth. Now, I'm not sure what the general consensus on this comic is, and quite frankly, I don't really care because I think this version of Diana of Themyscira is just absolutely insanely awesome. The comic picks up in an apocalyptic wasteland in what used to be Gotham City. Deep down in the remnants of what used to be the Batcave, Wonder Woman had been kept alive in a containment unit and was awoken by a group of humans who were running from a mutated monster known as a Hydra. After saving the humans and liberating their city, she journeys to Themyscira only to find out that the Hydra are actually her fellow Amazons mutated by atomic radiation after the Amazons had decided to go to war with the rest of humanity who had driven the Earth to its breaking point. The world had bombarded Themyscira with nuclear fire, even though Diana used the absolute limits of her abilities to try and stop that. When Superman, who fought for humanity, turned up to try and explain why he couldn't have helped Wonder Woman, we see just how powerful this Wonder Woman is. Losing complete control of herself, Wonder Woman and Superman fought each other to the point of causing a great fire that plunged the world into the apocalypse. And at the end of that fight, Wonder Woman, who was double-fisting some kryptonite, brought Superman to his final rest with a hole straight through his chest. She collapsed from exhaustion and forgot everything. So when she learned of this past, Wonder Woman decided to set things right and protected what was left of humanity from what she once called her sisters. Number 6, Injustice Superman. The Superman of the Injustice universe has pretty much the same history as the baseline Superman. But when the Joker kidnaps the pregnant Lois Lane, it lures Superman into a trap of fear gas. In this fear-induced state, Superman hallucinates that his wife is the villain Doomsday and instantly attacks her, flying Lois and what would have been John Kent into space, taking both their lives and also inadvertently causing a nuclear detonation to destroy his city, Metropolis. After losing his city, his wife, and his baby, Superman goes into a pretty understandable rage. bursting into the interrogation room where Batman is learning the true intentions of the Joker, and he just plunges his super fist straight through that clown's chest. Following these events, Superman takes control of the entire Earth and rules it as a tyrant. He turns on and destroys his friends, is manipulated by Wonder Woman, of all people, holds nothing back, and puts the entire Earth under the control of his regime. He is a seriously hardcore version of Superman who has actually been revisited recently in John Kent's comic book story, where he even took the life of Earth 3's Ultraman very easily. It was kinda nuts. Now you may be wondering, how is this guy better than the original? He's not really. It's not the character himself that's better, it's more like the entire story as a whole is just really interesting and compelling, making it awesome to learn more and more about this evil version of Superman. Number 5, Martian Manhunter. Look, I think it's incredibly easy to overlook Martian Manhunter's incredible capabilities. Yes, he is more well known for being a telepath and a shapeshifter, but this guy packs a hell of a punch with the Martian abilities of phasing, Martian vision, and density alteration. In DC 1 Million, we get a version of John Johns, or John Jones, who leads a war against Darkseid and gets him to surrender to the Source Wall, becoming trapped inside of it. The Source Wall, in return, gave John one wish. His wish was to become one with Mars, meaning John became a living planet while maintaining his multiversal telepathy and his genius level intelligence. Now we don't get to see much of this version of John, but we can guess a lot of things about this version. Firstly, his weakness to fire is probably non-existent, because I mean, people gotta make fire on a planet, I guess. We can also probably assume John keeps his other Martians' abilities to a degree, and there's also the possibility that the passage of time has increased those natural abilities considering he's defeated Darkseid. We can also assume that he would now also have the powers that usually come with being a living planet, like weather manipulation and control of the elements, and he can control the sands of Mars to an incredible degree, so there's that too. Number 4, Last Night on Earth, Joker. In Batman Last Night on Earth by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, Batman, or rather a clone of Batman created by Batman's own resurrection machine, goes out into a post-apocalyptic world completely rocked thanks to Lex Luthor. One of the first things that this new Batman finds, funnily enough, is a lantern with the head of the Joker somehow still alive and speaking inside of it. Kind of like in God of War when Kratos gets the head of Mimir that he just carries around on his hip. Batman takes this Joker lantern as a companion, and this talkative Joker keeps the Dark Knight company as he works to find a way to dethrone Omega, who is a villain that rules over the apocalyptic world using Darkseid's Omega effect. This Joker is strangely friendly and compassionate, and he is honestly a great cheerleader for Batman, which I don't think any of us expected to see. What we really didn't expect to see is that this disembodied head is given a robotic body to become Batman's new Robin. What? Number 3, Kingdom Come Shazam. In an alternate possible future, metahumans or superheroes are now hated. Because of this, Billy Batson hasn't become Shazam in years and is now a full-grown man looking a lot like his alter ego minus the cool costume and cape and powers and all that stuff. He was eventually brainwashed by Lex Luthor into believing that metahumans and even Captain Marvel, who lives inside of him, sort of, are all monsters. In time, Bruce Wayne tries to convince Billy otherwise, which eventually forces him to turn to Shazam once more, breaking open the metahuman prison and starting a massive war that puts the world at risk. Now, after a nuclear device was dropped threatening to take out thousands of people, Superman convinced Billy to help, and Shazam outraced Superman to the device using his lightning to destroy it and sacrificing himself to save both humans and metahumans, ending the hatred against superheroes once and for all in this world. Number 2, Bat Prince. Another alternate version of Batman, I know, but he belongs to probably one of my favorite alternate reality stories to come out of DC Comics, Dark Knights of Steel. This story takes place in a world of medieval fantasy, where the Wayne family ruled their kingdom until the mother and father of Superman came to Earth. The L family house became rulers of the land after a horrible attack on the Wayne family. Now, as the surviving son of the Waynes, Bruce serves as both a knight and an adopted son to the L family, with his network of Robins and his super brilliant mind. But as the world is at each other's throats, this Bat Prince learns about the actions that led to his birth and the powers he now possesses as a half-Kryptonian Dark Knight. Dark Knights of Steel that came out last year in 2022 just has so many interesting and fresh takes on classic DC characters. It's fresh and fun and flirty, and I got a variant cover of the first issue and it looks so sweet, and maybe one day I'll get to show you guys. Definitely read Dark Knights of Steel. And finally, into number 1, it's Green Lantern Earth 1. This Green Lantern focused story is one that I actually really like. It brushes over a lot of things very easily, but it made me care about the Green Lanterns, and that's something I didn't think was ever gonna happen. Sorry. It almost feels like a dark sci-fi take on Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns. Essentially, in this story, Hal Jordan is on the moon with a crew of workers who mine for metal when he comes across a crashed alien ship containing the Green Lantern ring, a Green Lantern battery, the corpse of Abin Sur, and a robot called a Manhunter. Hal claimed the ring, just taking it off of the alien corpse, and use it to fight the Manhunter that sprung on him. What had happened is that the Manhunter robots were created by the Guardians of the Universe to take out the Green Lanterns, as the Lanterns had grown uncontrollable, and they were pretty successful, but also grew out of control, putting the galaxy in peril and leaving the Green Lantern core broken and spread extremely thin. Hal meets up with an equally inexperienced Kilowag, and they go across the universe trying to rally together any Green Lanterns they can. It all feels like, the best way I saw it described was as if Christopher Nolan and Ridley Scott teamed up and made a Green Lantern story. It does feel like that, and it's just such a cool and fresh take.
At number 10 is Mac Gargan's Venom. See, the original Venom was just Spidey's old black costume with a creepy smile slapped onto it, but when Mac Gargan, aka the Scorpion, took over the symbiote, he went all in the new design. You see, Eddie and the black symbiote suit had to part ways, leaving the Scorpion to bond with the Venom symbiote, and the design that we got from that union would go on to inspire Venom's design for years to come. And boy, oh boy, did things change. Gargan's Venom looked way cooler. They added some more white to the mix, which made the design really pop, and he got jacked. Like, seriously, this Venom had some insane muscle mass going on. Goes to show that just a wee little makeover can do wonders. Gargan's Venom took the classic look and cranked up the fierceness factor by like 10 times. At number 9 is the modern Brainiac. Brainiac's evolution has been quite the roller coaster ride, with his different designs reflecting the changing times. You see, back in the day, his Bronze Age robot form was cool, but pretty generic for the time. It lacked that classic Brainiac flair. Now, post-Crisis, they tried to get back into the roots, giving him more human-like vibes mixed with machinery. Then came the post-Infinite Crisis era, where Brainiac looked like he hit the gym a little bit too hard. Like, way too beefy if you ask me, especially for a character literally named Brainiac. But that black and white costume with the purple accents, now that was a move in the right direction. Then it all culminated in Justice League No Justice, where we finally got that sleek, modern look that was almost like the perfect Instagram filter for the Silver Age Brainiac. And boom, villain upgrade achieved. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. You can also leave a comment, say something nice. At number 8, Akihiro's old man's costume. Wolverine's son, Akihiro, had a very rocky relationship with his father, but then Norman Osborn recruited him to be among the Dark Avengers to take on the spot of Wolverine, and things took an interesting turn. You see, Akihiro stepped into his father's shoes quite literally by wearing the very same iconic brown and orange costume that Wolverine used to don all those years ago. This costume makeover was a game changer. Akihiro's tattooed left arm added a unique flair to the outfit, making him stand out even more. Suddenly, he transformed from a shirtless brawler into a menacing, true-to-form Wolverine. Fans loved it, I loved it, and Akihiro's popularity soared, eventually leading to his very own short-lived series. Sometimes a fresh look can make all the difference, and in Akihiro's case, it elevated him from just another angry offspring to a formidable and memorable Dark Avenger. At number 7, Lex Luthor is back in business. You see, when Lex Luthor first showed up in the comic world, he was just your typical mad scientist type. You know, the whole lab coat and crazy lack of hair deal. I mean, it was okay, I guess, but then things got really interesting. In the Silver and Bronze ages of comics, they started experimenting with his look, and slowly but surely it did get better. But DC Comics wouldn't stop there. They saw the potential in Lex, and eventually they took him to the next level, turning him into a businessman. And you know what? That was the best thing that probably ever happened to him, because his business suit suits him perfectly. It's like he was born to wear it. It's all about that duality, you know. On the surface, he's this respectable guy running a corporation, but underneath, he's still that same old Lex plotting and scheming. It's now become his trademark look, and honestly, it's made him a more compelling character as a whole. And number 6 is the humanoid version of Ultron. Ultron's been through many bodies, and there usually isn't much difference between them. However, his humanoid form and his very first original body are leagues apart. The lab assistant robot Pym initially created had a sort of Art Deco feel to it, but it really didn't look intimidating whatsoever. I mean, it wasn't meant to. However, Ultron's humanoid forms absolutely took the terrifying up a notch. Ultron's very first adamantium body is absolutely perfect. It has some heft to it, and it looks like it can do some serious damage. Now, the best part of Ultron's look across all of his incarnations has always been his faceplate, a chilling, inhuman visage that every Avengers fan loves. And while some Ultron bodies are better than others, the very first humanoid body is a massively important part of the character's development. And number 5 is Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime's big villain reveal was a total plot twist, but let's be honest, his original look was kinda meh. I mean, he had the whole traditional Superman thing going on, but he looked more like a cosplay enthusiast than a real threat. Then, bam, he's back from the Speed Force, rocking this wicked armor made from the Anti-Monitor's remains. Talk about a makeover. This new getup still rocks the S-Shield emblem, but it's edgier and way more intimidating. And the best part, it's not just for show. That's right, the armor isn't just a fashion statement. It's got some serious functionality. It actually stores up Yellow Sun energy to supercharge his powers. So not only does he look cooler, but Superboy Prime is also way more powerful in this fit. A win-win in the world of supervillain redesigns. At number 4, speaking of Anti-Monitor, we've got Anti-Monitor's second form. DC villains are well known for their epic battles and high elimination counts, but when it comes to the ultimate universe-destroying baddie, Anti-Monitor takes the cake. In Crisis on Infinite Earths, he wiped out entire realities like it was no big deal. And when we first laid eyes on him, it was spine-tinglingly awesome. But here's a twist. He didn't stick with that same old look. After taking down Supergirl in a brutal showdown, he came back with a brand new suit of armor, and let me tell you, it was like a total upgrade. A different shape, totally different colors, the whole shebang, which really brought a whole new level of intimidating. This revamped look has become his signature style, and even though artists have tried to update it over the years, none can top that masterpiece. And number 3 is Mr. Freeze from the animated series. Remember way back in the day when Mr. Freeze was just a goofy mad scientist who dressed in a green and red suit with a fishbowl on his head? Wasn't too menacing. But then, Batman the animated series came along and gave him an insane makeover. They dropped the tragic backstory bomb on him concerning his frozen wife, and then they dressed him up all sleek and futuristic with muted blues, a cooler domed helmet, and those long segmented limbs. He looks like a robot straight out of a vintage cartoon. The thing is, even though his backstory and the character got more depth in the comics later on, nobody really stuck with that awesome animated look, which is such a shame because I really think there was a missed opportunity here. And number 2 is Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom is one of Marvel's most iconic villains, but he didn't start out as the menacing figure we all know and love today. When he first popped up in Fantastic Four number 5, he had a cool vibe, but wasn't really the ultimate baddie he would become. Thanks to artist genius Jack Kirby and some trial and error, Dr. Doom's look evolved into something legendary. Doom's costume, with its medieval meets modern tech style, is nothing short of perfection. It's a visual representation of his brilliance and power. And that's pretty much why it hasn't changed very much over the years. It encapsulates everything that makes Doom the quintessential villain. So in the world of villain redesigns, Dr. Doom's classic look stands tall as a shining example of how sometimes the very first design is the very best. And at number 1, General Zod's post-Infinite Crisis prison uniform. General Zod had his fair share of makeovers throughout the years, but the one that really hit the bullseye was his look in Last Son of Krypton. Forget the flashy Silver Age military getup or the overly complicated versions from modern comics. This time, Zod rocked a sleek Kryptonian prison uniform. Clean, simple, and totally on point. It's a white, black, and gray ensemble with a cool overcoat and snazzy goggles to boot. These goggles weren't just for show either, because they help him see in the Phantom Zone. Talk about fashion meeting function. Wait, I'm not sure why the Kryptonians would want their prisoners to be able to see in the Phantom Zone. I digress. Now, fast forward to the inevitable redesigns. They couldn't capture the essence of that original iconic look. Sometimes less is more. At number 10 is Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. Thank you to Rodney Lindsay 849 for suggesting him in part 1 of the series. Sam Wilson is the guy who became the new Captain America after Steve Rogers hung up his shield. But here's the thing, in the Avengers, even though he took on Cap's mantle, he's not exactly getting the spotlight he deserves. See, Steve Rogers, the OG Captain, is a tough act to follow, no doubt, but Sam's got the heart, the skills, and the wings to match. He's proven himself time and time again, but fans still don't give him the credit he's due. Let's not forget, he's carrying on the legacy of Captain America himself, and that's no small task. But nevertheless, Wilson's a great successor. This guy's got some mad skills. He can fly like a boss with those wingsuit thingies, plus he's got his vibranium shield that he rocks just as good as Cap did. But for some reason, he's often just pushed to the sidelines. At number 9 is White Tiger. Thank you to Victor Sage _. You might not have heard much about her, and that's honestly a real shame. White Tiger, aka Ava Ayala, made her appearance in the Ultimate Spider-Man and some Lego Marvel games. She's got a pretty cool backstory too, being the sister of Hector Ayala, the original White Tiger. But here's the thing, she's been kind of left in the shadows. With her agility, strength, and that insanely underrated mystical amulet she's got the potential to be a real force on the Avengers team. There's also that whole fling with Peter Parker that fans seem to be really into. So it's high time we get to see more of White Tiger in action. She's got what it takes to be one of the strongest Avengers, and it's about time she got the recognition she deserves. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. At number 8, we got Hercules. The Avengers have housed a plethora of gods, you guys. But you see, when people think about godly Avengers, usually it's Thor that hogs the spotlight. But hold on a second, because Hercules deserves some serious recognition too. He's got the strength, the charisma, and an impressive set of abs, yet he often plays second fiddle to the god of thunder. Imagine being a god yourself and still living under someone else's shadow. Not cool, right? Like, even when you go into Herc's fandom wiki, his featured quote is literally a self-comparison to Thor about how whatever Thor can do, Hercules can do even mightier. It seems like no matter what, if Hercules is a part of the conversation, Thor has to be too. Or Maestro, I guess, but you get my point, right? Hercules deserves better. He's taken on cosmic threats, lifted entire mountains, and shown that he's more than just a pretty face. Let's give Herc some time to shine, Marvel. After all, the Avengers could use a bit more divine power in their ranks. At number 7 is Loki. Wait, what? Now, you might be thinking, why are you even considering Loki the literal antagonist of the first Avengers movie in a discussion about the Avengers? Well, it's because Loki is one of those characters who doesn't neatly fit into the good or bad box. He's kind of like that friend who's mostly a pain, but sometimes has moments of real kindness. When it comes to the Avengers, we often focus on the big names, but Loki's different. He's a trickster, a troublemaker, and he's caused his fair share of chaos, but deep down, there's a part of him that wants to do the right thing, and frankly, that's what makes his character so fascinating. So is Loki good or bad? Well, it's not that simple. See, people aren't just good or bad, they're a mix of both, and Loki here is no exception. He's made mistakes, but he's also shown that he can change and do the right thing when it counts. And so in the end, whether you think Loki deserves better or not, there's one thing for sure. He's a character who keeps us guessing, and that's what makes him one of the most intriguing Avengers of them all. And number 6 is Quicksilver, recommended by Nelson SC9670 and Rodney Lindsay 849. Again, Quicksilver bit the bullet way too early in the MCU. I mean, don't get me wrong, Wanda's cool and all with her reality-bending powers, but her brother Pietro, aka Quicksilver, well, he definitely got the short end of the stick. See, he's got super speed, which is super awesome, but here's the deal. Quicksilver didn't get nearly enough screen time or development in the movies. I mean, sure, he had his moments, but they were just glimpses of what he could do. With a power like super speed, there's so much potential for epic action sequences. I mean, we've all seen the X-Men scenes. He could have been a real game changer in the MCU battles. Plus, he's also got that snarky attitude that could have added some humor to the team. So let's give Quicksilver the love he deserves, and maybe, just maybe, if fans cry loud enough, maybe we'll get another shot in the MCU. And number 5 is Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones is an Avenger who's been on the sidelines for way too long. You might have recognized her from her Netflix series, but in the comics, she's a powerhouse. Super strength, durability, and some mean investigative skills. Yet she's often overshadowed by big names like Iron Man and Thor. Now, while she's not out there space battling aliens, her street level heroics are just as vital. Imagine if she had just a little more screen time and a chance to shine alongside the heavier hitters. Jessica Jones deserves way more recognition and a bigger role in the MCU. At number 4 is War Machine. Now, many people just think of War Machine as sort of an Iron Man light, but he deserves way more credit than that. I mean, come on, his name is literally War Machine. The guy's suit of armor is loaded with firepower. Sure, he doesn't have the same level of tech or even charisma as Tony Stark, but he's a vital member of the team. Think about it. War Machine is a military asset that brings a different set of skills to the table. He's got the experience, the discipline, and the tactical know-how. Plus, the suit of his can go toe-to-toe with some serious threats. So let's not forget about War Machine when we talk about the Avengers, because he's definitely one of the strongest and deserves a lot more recognition. And number 3 is Jack of Hearts, recommended by Robert Pike 5670. Now, the Jack of Hearts isn't your typical Avenger. See, he's got this super crazy cosmic power, like he can manipulate energy and stuff. Sort of like he's a walking nuclear reactor. But here's the thing, he's always kind of been underrated despite his insanely powerful superpowers. He's been in and out of the Avengers, never really getting the spotlight he deserves. I mean, okay, just imagine having that kind of power and not being in the spotlight. It's like having a Lamborghini and just keeping it in the garage, am I right? The Jack of Hearts is definitely one of the strongest Avengers, period, and it's about time he got the recognition he deserves. And number 2 is Madam Web. There's one character who's been lurking in the shadows, and I'm not talking about a stealthy superhero. I'm talking about Cassandra Webb here, aka Madam Web. Now, Madam Web is kind of like the unsung hero of the Marvel Universe. See, she's got this crazy ability to see into the future and across the multiverse. Basically, she's the ultimate guidance counselor for Spider-Man. But here's the thing, folks, she's been nowhere to be found in the movies. Not in the MCU, not in the Spider-Verse films, nada. I mean, come on, with her powers, she could have helped the Avengers dodge a lot of disasters. So let's hope one day Madam Web gets her time in the spotlight, because she's the unsung hero in the background who deserves a lot more love on the big screen in the foreground. And at number 1 is Black Widow. Honestly, I'm stunned that nobody mentioned Natasha Romanoff in the comments of part 1, which is surprising, because if there's any superhero who got relegated to the sidelines during the entire run of the MCU, it's Natasha Romanoff. Now, what's impressive about her is that she's just a regular human being, no superpowers. Yet she's keeping pace with all of these superhuman heavy hitters. But here's the kicker. She even went as far as to sacrifice herself during Infinity War, way before she even got her own solo film. like, talk about a major oof. I mean, sure, eventually we got that prequel, but I mean, it would have been nice to see her come back at the end of Endgame. She deserved a lot more screen time, don't you think? You see, the strongest superheroes aren't just the ones with the flashiest powers, and Black Widow, being a human who just basically went to the gym her entire life, definitely proved that.
Alright, kicking off the list at number 10 today is Martian Manhunter. Now look, Martian Manhunter may be one of the main Justice League members, but he gets slept on way too much. I will always reference this when describing John's power, but there is a panel from the New 52 when Martian Manhunter is fighting off all the members of the Justice League at the same time. With his left hand, Manhunter is using his shape-shifting ability to turn that hand into a massive spiked club and whacking away both Cyborg and Green Lantern. With his right hand, I think it's safe to say he's showing off his super strength, as he's got a power grip on the lasso of truth, and I'm assuming he's just resisting its power. Behind him is Aquaman, who's like jabbing John with his trident, but the trident is just phasing through him because John can become intangible. Then we got Superman, who's like flying around the fight at a decent distance while Manhunter uses his heat vision to keep him there. And then the funniest part is Batman doing absolutely nothing, just picking up the Flash, who seems to have just been knocked down. It's almost a perfect display of his abilities, but leaving out a handful and one of the biggest. John is the most powerful telepath on Earth, and one of the most powerful in the entire universe. Martian Manhunter has been called the most powerful being on the planet, and he's at the top of the list of people that Superman is afraid to fight. Number 9, Booster Gold. Poor old Booster Gold, the greatest hero that you've probably never heard of. His day job involves traveling through time and space, ensuring that events that are meant to happen do happen, and he absolutely rocks at it. There was even a time that Booster went so far as to create an entire second persona named Supernova for himself, while simultaneously faking a psychological breakdown and eventually faking the passing of his own Booster Gold identity, all while he went and successfully replaced several major superheroes who were missing at the time, including Superman. The thing about Booster Gold is that in order to protect himself from other time travelers, Booster has to come across as a failure, an absolute dumpster fire of mediocrity. Somebody that no one will ever want to bother with remembering anything about in the future. That's why Booster has his shtick of being greedy, incompetent, and attention-seeking, which actually kind of began as genuine, but has long since been a facade. He willingly endures a life of ridicule from the people he protects without them knowing, because when you're dealing with time travel, being the butt of the joke actually gives you an advantage. Booster is also called upon to maintain events which are pretty much less than excellent, like ensuring that bad things that have to happen actually happen. For example, he routinely guards a little German baby boy born on the 20th of April 1889 in a small town in Austria-Hungary from other first-time time-traveling superheroes. He does all of those things because the alternative is the complete unraveling of all time and space and the destruction of everything. Number 8, Firestorm. Where do we even start with Firestorm? The main version of the character is Ronnie Raymond, who is fused with his professor, Martin Stein. But there are a lot of other versions of Firestorm, a lot of whom are either one person or different fusions of other people. It's annoyingly complex. The character, as you might guess, has pyrokinetic abilities plus durability, flight, reflexes, and super strength. But the character's main thing is that they can rearrange the molecules of matter. Now, this ability is obviously incredibly OP, and it would simply take one story to make him completely god level, but for the most part, writers kind of misuse him. Potentially, this character could transform entire planets into whatever he wanted. With this power, Firestorm's done some pretty godlike things. For example, Firestorm manifested a pink bunny mascot suit out of thin air around the villain's skull crusher. He's turned explosions into a jack-in-the-box and a cement truck into a giant teddy bear. It's kind of hilarious, but like low-key, absolutely insane. On a way less hilarious note, he also turned a girl into salt when he was resurrected as Deathstorm. And in Doomsday Clock, Firestorm accidentally turned a crowd of Russian protesters into glass. But outside of matter manipulation, Firestorm has had some impressive feats, like surviving the nuclear meltdown that originally created the hero and absorbing all the excess radiation. And another time, Firestorm survived a straight-on nuclear nuclear explosion. An alternate version of the character called Deathstorm was able to absorb and capture 3 different Justice League teams into its own Firestorm matrix. And in Infinite Crisis, Firestorm was able to seal a multiversal rift. In case you haven't noticed, we have kind of moved away from physically unstoppable characters to characters that are just pure science fiction gods. Number 7, John Constantine. John Constantine is a really fun inclusion for this list because he is extremely powerful and not powerful at all at the same time. John can wield magic for sure through years and years of learning, training, traveling, but he doesn't have any kind of magical affinity or any kind of beneficial magical family heritage. John relies on actual magic as a very last resort, and the magic he knows how to use isn't anything to scoff at. He has even, very momentarily, been able to hold back Dr. Fate, but using magic comes at a cost, and he knows this. So what Constantine prefers is trickery. Lies, deceit, traps, his wits, weapons, artifacts, backup, and calling in favors. John smokes, he drinks, he's in his middle ages, and he ain't in the greatest of health. He can throw a punch, for sure, but most people are a physical match for him. But at the same time, he has been able to trick, outsmart, or overpower gods, demons, and angels. Batman, Superman, Darkseid, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, the Phantom Stranger, the Spirit of Justice, the Spectre, the Spirit of Vengeance, Lucifer, and even the Presence, who is basically DC's version of God. He tricked them all. He tricked the Presence into curing John of cancer and granting him divine protection by selling his soul to 3 separate Hell Lords who would start a civil war over his soul, which would spill out onto Earth and into heaven. Don't sleep on this bad-mouthed middle-aged man. Number 6. Atom Smasher. Thanks to exposure to radiation, Atom Smasher is already an incredibly impressive looking guy. He stands at 7 foot 6 inches tall, and he is jacked. This guy's bicep is probably bigger than my torso, which isn't really saying much. But his real power is being able to grow even bigger. He has the power of atomic dispersal, meaning he is able to control the distance between his atoms, increasing to anywhere from 28 to 60 feet in height. His mass, durability, strength, speed, and stamina are all increased even more so as he grows. Now, Albert Rothstein made his superhero debut under a different name. Initially, Al went by the superhero alias of Nuklon, and he was an original member of the superhero team called Infinity Inc. But following in his godfather, the Atom's footsteps, Albert took on his Atom Smasher name and joined up with the Justice Society of America in JSA number 1 by James Robinson. The thing about Atom Smasher that makes me think he deserves better is his entire interaction with Black Adam. When Black Adam joined the JSA, one of its members that he happened to get close with was Atom Smasher, and he even convinced Smasher to leave the team and start an anti-hero team instead, which led Smasher down a darker path, even becoming part of the Suicide Squad for a time. He has been redeemed since, but I don't think he ever really deserved that in the first place. Number 5, Hawkman. Hawkman is a doozy to talk about. Essentially, he has 2 main origins. He was either a space cop or a reincarnated prince, and sometimes both. Basically, Hawkman's secret identity is Carter Hall, an archaeologist and a museum creator who is actually a reincarnation of the ancient Egyptian prince, Khufu. Now Khufu, who would become known as Hawkman, discovered an alien spacecraft from the planet Thanagar powered by an anti-gravity element called the Nth metal, which transformed his soul and doomed him and his love to be reincarnated over and over again throughout time. Some of his incarnations include Brian Kent, the Silent Knight from 5th century Britain, Conrad von Grimm, the son of a blacksmith in 14th century Germany, Captain John Smith of the 16th century English colony in Virginia, Hannibal Hawks, the Night Hawk in the American Old West, Detective James Wright, a Pinkerton detective in the early 20th century, and finally, Carter Hall himself. Whether it's because of his really confusing origins, or maybe because people don't realize how cool this character actually is, he just kinda seems to suck. And when I was a kid, I thought he was super cool. Oh, to be an innocent, sweet child again. Number 4, Raven. Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go brought the new Teen Titans to a big audience, and one character who really stood out is Raven. She's been like the character on that team that everyone seems to like regardless of who you are. Seriously, you can't go to a comic book convention without seeing someone rocking a Raven cosplay. She's like the goth icon for superhero fans. Raven's super popular, and it's kinda strange that DC hasn't done more with her. She's got an awesome but also absolutely terribly upsetting backstory, crazy strong powers that could literally destroy all we hold dear, and a personality that fans absolutely adore. Honestly, she could totally be DC's version of a much better and more interesting Scarlet Witch without any trouble. It's just frustrating that DC isn't giving her more love in the comics like they do in the shows. Number 3, Aquaman. The ocean is a genuinely terrifying and interesting place. As such, the Atlanteans of DC Comics possess a few advantages over us regular humans. They have super strength, speed, endurance, and durability, all in order to help them survive the mind-boggling pressure at the insane depths of the ocean at which they live. But Aquaman himself is a royal Atlantean, which means that he is a super Atlantean. His strength and durability has allowed him to close the Marianas Trench, which I don't even know how that works, go toe-to-toe with powerful foes like Martian Manhunter, Lobo, and Wonder Woman, and tank blasts from Starro. His speed, which is often forgotten about, allows him to swim at 10,000 feet per second, and he can move even faster without the pressure of water drag, allowing him to dodge bullets and catch lasers. But Aquaman has quite a few other advantages. His control over sea life has helped him in a large majority of his fights, with his underwater allies coming to his aid and helping him do things he probably couldn't do alone, like creating a massive tsunami with whales. His telepathic skill is actually quite impressive as well. Some of my favorite feats include him telepathically controlling a Green Lantern ring, reading the Martian Manhunter's mind without permission, and controlling a space dragon. For a while, he also had a hand that was a hook, and then that became a magical mystical water hand that could do a whole other level of feats, but I'm kind of out of time, so we're moving on. Number 2, Animal Man. Thanks to an encounter with some rather strange aliens, Bernard Buddy Baker gained access to the morphogenic field, otherwise known as the Red. This field basically allows Buddy to absorb and use different attributes of nearby animals while still being a human. So, he has been able to move his eyes independently like a chameleon, he's been able to ram against a speeding car with the abilities of a rhino, he can fly by tapping into birds, he's regenerated a whole lost limb by tapping into an earthworm, gained the strength to lift a car by tapping into a spider, and he's ran at 75 miles per hour by adopting the abilities of an ant. But his abilities have done some even more surprising things, like for example, when a villain cut Buddy off from the nearby animals by putting him in a room, he took on the attributes of the bacteria inside that villain's body, allowing Animal Man to duplicate himself. He can even tap into the attributes of extinct animals like dinosaurs, which has allowed him to punch out a T-Rex and survive being crashed into by a plane. Over time, he's received power boosts that allow him to use multiple abilities at once, and then to even use the abilities of any animal in the universe, like when he used the power of a quote sun eater, which let him fly across the galaxy in an instant. Number 1, Icon. While Milestone's Dakotaverse isn't currently a part of the DC universe, the New 52 previously merged the universes together with the Wildstorm reality. Icon returned as the most powerful Milestone character in the new Earth M setting. He was originally an alien named Arnis, whose ship crashed on an Earth plantation. Arnis was raised as an unwilling servant named Augustus Freeman until his memories and powers developed during the Civil War. He spent 100 years working as a lawyer before Raquel Irvin convinced him to become the costumed hero Icon and set an example for others. Icon has incredible strength that rivals Superman's. Icon also has incredible reserves of energy that he can project in various forms. He's one of the best Superman-like characters, and yet I feel like he just hasn't been given any real good times to shine recently. It's like DC kinda just forgot about him and a lot of the Dakotaverse alongside him. Number 10, Calvin Ellis. Instead of Kal-El landing on a farm in Kansas, a black Kryptonian named Calvin Ellis was sent to Earth to escape his planet's destruction. Nevertheless, he didn't grow up trying to fit into society, as he instead became very ambitious. What do I mean by that? Well, Calvin Ellis worked hard enough to eventually become the President of the United States, giving him a position that allowed him to better better protect his world both politically and physically. He still carried his role as Superman and even became a multiversal hero when he teamed up with the other versions of the character during the Infinite Frontier era. Calvin Ellis gained political power as well as his own incredible Kryptonian abilities, not to mention that he reprogrammed the alien intelligence Brainiac to help him in his duties. He's also a talented boxer. So there's that as well. Number 9. Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going to go back in time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. In the dark multiverse, however, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she didn't expect to happen was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected. Assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the dark multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, Lex Luthor's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he finally does return. The whole story is tragic, but it's also really cool. And to maybe check out part 1 to make sure I didn't miss any of your favorite alternate DC Universe superheroes. Number 8. Batman Who Laughs. While the Batman Who Laughs was Bruce Wayne from Earth -22 of the Dark Multiverse, he basically becomes the most powerful alternate version of the Joker and Batman ever. Everything about this Batman remained relatively the same until the day the Joker found out he was going to pass away, and so he decided to take everyone with him. Joker took down a large number of Batman's rogues gallery, including Catwoman. He caused the passing of Commissioner Gordon, and he paralyzed Batman, forcing the Dark Knight to watch as the Joker took the lives of countless innocent people. Once Batman regained his movement though, he lost it and put the Joker to rest. Now, as his one last sick joke, a toxin in the Joker's heart escaped his body, infecting Batman and turning him into the most terrifying Joker-Batman hybrid you have ever seen. With all the intelligence and physical ability of Batman mixed with the insanity and psychosis of the Joker, the Batman Who Laughs is off the chain. He has a book on how to destroy the multiverse, as well as a real-world comic book that lays out the structure of the universe. He has a pack of metal cards that can warp reality, he has a pack of feral Jokerized Robins, and he can corrupt people to his side with his Joker toxin, like Shazam as an example. He wiped out all the heroes of his universe and several others and put together a squad of evil Batmen who he used to become one of the biggest threats in the multiverse, almost bringing the end of everything. He's not better, but he's cool. Number 7. Furnace. Before the Martians became the Martians, they were an incredibly violent and powerful race called the Burning. The Guardians of the Universe experimented on the Burning and put genetic blocks in place to make them afraid of the fire that they used as their most powerful weapon. That's why Martian Manhunter has a fear of fire. Now, after the Justice League was trapped and taken down in Obsidian Age Atlantis, John Jones blamed himself for his friend's passing because his fear of fire completely overtook him. So, he recruits Scorch to help him overcome his fear, and he would use his telepathy to help her deal with her own problems. Now, unfortunately, in doing this, he also broke the genetic blocks, allowing John to become the incredibly dangerous Furnace, with all of his original powers boosted in potential, especially his telepathy, plus an insane level of pyrokinesis. Number 6. All-Star Superman. All-Star Superman is actually a 12-issue series that sets itself apart from the rest of the DC universe by sort of being a standalone story. At the beginning of the tale, Superman saves an exploration mission to the sun that was sabotaged by Lex Luthor. But because of his overexposure to the yellow sun, he ends up developing new abilities such as the power to harness the bioelectric aura and pushing his normal abilities to unimaginable levels. But it wasn't just his powers that got a boost. His intellect, creativity, imagination, and curiosity also got got boosted up to the point that he started getting new skills and trying out new experiments, even some that would allow a successor for himself to be created. That's important because while his abilities and mental acuity had been boosted up, and he even became immune to green kryptonite, the overexposure to the sun also meant he was starting to slowly pass away as his cells became overloaded, causing this story to get really damn emotional. Number 5. Vampire Batman. In the Elseworlds Batman and Dracula trilogy, Batman goes up against vampires who have turned Gotham into their home, and then eventually he goes up against Dracula himself. In the first novel, Red Rain, the hero wipes out the vampires and Dracula, although he is transformed into a vampire himself, which means we get to see Batman take on crime using the powers of a vampire in the very next novel, Bloodstorm. He does his bestest to resist the darker aspects of being a vampire, but that all goes kaput when Batman lashes out and drains the Joker after the Joker de-lifed Catwoman. Now, Batman has Alfred and Gordon stake him, putting Batman into a catatonic state. A state that he was then revived from in the third book, Crimson Mist, when criminals took over Gotham in his absence. But he is almost completely animalistic now thanks to the isolation. A bloodthirsty vampire Batman quickly wipes out most of his enemies in a very brutal form, draining them in the process until he is finally put to rest by Alfred, Commissioner Gordon, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, who all go with him to the grave. Number 4. Strange Visitor Superman. Another Superman. I know, but okay, before we start, technically, this Superman is not canon, but he is truly one of the more powerful versions of the character ever. In the story, Superman outlives everything in the universe, living for literally billions and billions and billions of years. He lives so long and gets so powerful that he gains new abilities like being able to split into thousands of copies that allow the hero to do what he does best throughout the universe at the same time. He outlives all the gods, cosmic entities, mortals, angels, demons, and everything. He watches countless civilizations rise and fall and learns an insane amount of skills like telepathy, which I didn't even know was a skill. He absorbs ridiculous amounts of energy, learns magic and strange sciences through all his copies, and then he reabsorbs them at the end of everything. He can fly faster than the entropic waves of the end of the universe and can manipulate the fabric of reality through sheer strength. Number 3. Nightwing: The New Order. In the year 2028, all-out war between heroes and villains had broke out in the streets of Metropolis. There was countless lost lives and destruction caused by the conflict for days, but after Batman passed away in the conflict, Nightwing activated a device in the war-torn streets of Metropolis that shut off or dampened the superpowers of most of the world, believing it was the best cause of action to save humanity from the dangers of the superpowered population. After this, Dick Grayson began a relationship with Starfire, and together they had a son named Jake. Now, as time went on, Starfire progressively fell out of love with Dick and resented his cause. One day, after Dick had been chosen to lead the new Crusaders division to hunt metahumans, Starfire left Dick without saying a word, forcing him to raise their son alone in Wayne Manor. Now, it turns out, Jake, Nightwing's son, is a metahuman with superpowers, and Nightwing now has to go against everything he previously stood for to save his son from the world that he created. Tell me that's not cool. It's cool. Number 2. Aurora of Themyscira. Comics seem to continuously supply us with things that we never thought we needed. In a moment not likely to ever happen again in the near future, the House of DC and the House of Marvel were friends. They could talk, they could play nice, and to prove that, one of the most beloved moments came in the mid-1990s when these two companies joined forces for a crossover. This took place in the amalgamated world of Earth 9602. On this Earth, it was not Diana Prince who became Wonder Woman. Instead, a meta-mutant child by the name of Aurora was rescued and raised as a princess by the Amazons by Queen Hippolyta, alongside Diana Prince. The two fought alongside each other as they grew up, but when the time came to choose who would be Wonder Woman, Aurora's natural ability to control and harness the forces of weather, plus her Amazonian training, allowed her to secure the victory. She went off to become one hell of a hero when she finally left the island to enter man's world. It's an interesting take on the character, and you should definitely check it out. And finally, in at number 1, Batman of Earth 32. Unexpected is probably how I would describe the Batman from Earth 32. Now, the original Batman of this universe was Bruce Wayne, who also became a Green Lantern, and then then flew off into space. When he left the Earth to serve in the Green Lantern Corps, it left the role of Batman open. And who would have guessed that of all the characters, Alexander Luthor would be the one to answer the call? First appearing in Lex Luthor Year of the Villain #1 from November 2019, this Batman was partnered up with Super Martian, which is a cross between a Martian, like Martian Manhunter, and a Kryptonian, like Superman. As you can imagine, they were a powerful combo. They took up a base of operations in what looked like the Batcave, but mixed with the Fortress of Solitude, and were assisted by Fred, their awesome robotic butler. Thanks to having the Martian as his partner, Lex Batman was well acquainted with telepathy, and while it caused him some pretty bad headaches, it was also instrumental in helping deal with the Prime Earth Lex Luthor when he inevitably showed up on this world. Number 10. Intelligent Design God Hulk. What if Planet Hulk? Most comic book readers, and especially fans of Marvel and the Hulk specifically, know of the storyline where the Illuminati banished the Hulk from Earth to send him to another planet. He ended up crash landing on Sakaar and becoming a gladiator turned liberator turned ruler of the planet until his ship self-destructed, taking out his family and bringing him back to Earth with a vengeance that no guilty person was safe from. What if Planet Hulk ends up asking the question, what if the Illuminati's banishment had hit its original target? In this story, Hulk lands on an incredibly peaceful and serene planet instead of Sakaar. And sure, he goes a bit ragey at first, but he eventually realizes the planet is inhabited by a race of peaceful creatures. Over long periods of time, the Hulk helps this race to evolve and become a thriving civilization. They end up viewing the Hulk as their god, and he basically acts as one that leads them to wealth and prosperity. It's one of the few Hulk stories that doesn't end in tears, and I'm more than happy to talk about it for that reason alone. Number 9. Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robbins, add some Canada, carry the two, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the Amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Now obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own, unless you count his undeniable skill. So most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slowed aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Dark Claw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, it's still as dark as both Bruce and Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. At some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a Sabretooth Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City, where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Dark Claw. If you like this list so far, make sure to drop a like, and to check out part 1, where we covered 10 more awesome Marvel variants better than the originals. Number 8. Earth Ascani Apocalypse. As some of you may know, Apocalypse and the mutant Nathan Summers, aka Cable, have a lot of history together. When Nathan was a freshly born little bean, he was infected with the techno-organic virus by Apocalypse as a test of his worthiness to become a host for Apocalypse. When the X-Men fought off Apocalypse and recovered Nathan, Cyclops begrudgingly agreed to send Nathan away to the future with the hope of him being cured. Earth 4932, or Earth Ascani, is that future. Taking place in the late 36th century, where Apocalypse ruled the entire Earth, when Nathan arrived, he was immediately cloned just in case he could not be saved. When this Apocalypse found out that Nathan was in the present, he sent out his forces to capture Nathan, but he had actually taken the clone instead. That clone would be raised up by Apocalypse with the hopes of him becoming the next host body for Apocalypse himself. Apocalypse named this clone Strife after a villain who fought him in the modern day, who was actually an adult Strife, which really confuses things, doesn't it? Since his current body had grown old and feeble, Apocalypse raised Strife to be extremely powerful as he planned to transfer his consciousness consciousness and power into Strife's body. Now, the real Nathan, who was being raised to be Cable by Jean Grey and Cyclops in this future world, ended up disrupting Apocalypse's plan, with the teenage Cable defeating this old and decrepit Apocalypse in combat. Number 7, Netflix Punisher. We have had 3 movies of debatable quality that have brought Frank Castle, the Punisher, to the screen. And while Ray Stevenson, rest in peace, and Thomas Jane, and I guess Dolph Lundgren did decent jobs as Frank Castle, when Jon Bernthal showed up as the Punisher in the 2nd season of Netflix's acclaimed Daredevil show, he did it better than anyone before him. Or at least for me, he did. It was the most believable version of the Punisher I had ever seen. Bernthal brought fury and intensity at all times, almost to the point of seeming positively insane, especially when compared with the morals of Matt Murdock, Daredevil. His character was also incredibly capable and brutal, as is necessary for the Punisher to even work in real life. When he got his own show in 2017, it brought everything to just a whole different level, telling a conspiracy story that also took a very interesting and pretty real look at PTSD in soldiers, while also bringing the right amount of brutality that you'd expect from a Punisher story. Even my mom liked this show, and she doesn't even read comics. That's the highest praise I know how to give. Number 6, Wagnarine. The Legion of Night comes from a world where Mr. Sinister corrupted the genomes of those who underwent the mutant resurrection protocols on Krakoa. Because of this, Sinister's control over humanity and mutantdom became supreme. One of his experiments was combining the genetics of different mutants to create powerful chimeras to serve him, and it made for some crazy awesome comic book moments. A particularly special project was turning the genes of Nightcrawler into a band of teleporting assassins. But the Legion of Night, while having leadership in the form of Sinister's female clone, Mother Righteous, also had field leaders. One of which was the mutant Banshee possessed by the spirit of variance called Vox Ignis, and the other was Mr. Sinister's favorite Nightcrawler chimera, Wagnarine. Mixing the DNA of both Nightcrawler and Wolverine, Wagnarine, funnily enough, was more of a mix of Laura Kinney, X-23, and Nightcrawler, and she made for an excellent assassin and leader for Mother Righteous once she had been freed from the control of Mr. Sinister. Wagnarine ended up beating the odds and procreated with the Cyclops Nightcrawler, aka Summer Night, to create a golden mutant teleporter who seemingly teleported to a random location immediately after her birth, causing Summer Night to lose control of himself and fall victim to the influence of Sinister once again. Eventually, it was revealed that Mother Righteous had actually taken the child, and when that was revealed to Wagnarine, she defected. Now 900 years later, she was finally able to bring down Mother Righteous and go on to try and live a life with her golden little baby. Number 5, Ultimate Spider-Man. The Ultimate Spider-Man comic run is considered by a lot of people to be one of the absolute best Spider-Man runs ever. Being one of the best things to come from writer Brian Michael Bendis, Ultimate Spider-Man revamped the origin of the Spider-Man character for modern audiences in the 2000s, but also made Peter Parker even younger. The story follows the original story pretty closely, with only minor tweaks and changes that make it even better, like the fixes made to the Clone Saga story, or even the changes made to the Venom symbiote. The Earth 1610 comic book run had one writer at the helm, which really helped to maintain consistency throughout the story, whereas Earth 616's Amazing Spider-Man carried on for 50 years and had many writers coming in to build the story, unfortunately giving it areas that kind of lacked to some degree. Ultimate Spider-Man took a great idea and then ran with it, building up an incredible cast of characters and injecting a great deal of emotion and heart into the story as it took familiar ideas in crazy new directions. Number 4, Ultimate Loki. Loki Laufey-san in the main Marvel universe is a pretty dastardly devil. He's always got schemes on schemes and is just doing what gods of mischief best, using his sorcery. But he's also somewhat redeemable. The Loki Odinson of Marvel's Ultimate Universe, however, is kind of just a madman, but one with the ability to warp reality. He could retcon history into anything he desired by either creating events that never happened or erasing events as if they never happened. He could create copies of himself, change the color of the skies, render himself near impervious to harm, even from Thor's hammer, and summon armies of monsters. One of the first things this Loki does while a member of the Warriors 3 alongside Thor and their brother Balder is visit his giantess mother, steal the Norn stones, and completely take the life of his brother Balder. He then took on the guise of Baron Zemo during World War II and led an attack on Asgard with frost giants and some super soldier Germans that he created. This got him banished to the room without doors, just like he planned. He was eventually freed from the room, and unlike his brothers, who had been reborn as mortal men, Loki was still a god, and an incredibly powerful one. He would be one of the main threats faced by the Ultimates when they formed up, but was eventually depowered by Odin. Number 3, Spider-Man 2099. Instead of getting bitten by a radioactive super spider, Miguel O'Hara's DNA was biologically mixed with a spider's DNA to save his life after he was forcibly hooked on a not far off future substance by his own employer. If that sounds convoluted, well, yeah, but it also sounds right at home in a comic book. Although the process of gaining his powers differed from Peter Parker, Miguel was still granted many of the same abilities at a pretty similar level. One thing that differs largely is Miguel's spider sense. He doesn't have one. Instead, Miguel has advanced super senses similar to someone like Daredevil or Wolverine. Miguel also has some abilities that are just wholly unique to him. For example, he possesses an incredible level of super speed as well as telepathic communication abilities, both of which are really freaking cool. He also has fangs and claws on his fingers and toes that he can use in combat. On top of all those powers though, Miguel is from the year 2099, which means that he naturally has a much more advanced set of technology at his disposal. But it's not just his powers that make him better. The Spider-Man 2099 story is awesome, but you'll have to do the reading to figure that out for yourself. Number 2, Tony Stark, Sorcerer Supreme. In all new X-Men Annual Number 1 from 2014, Marvel gave us a version of Tony Stark Iron Man from the temporary reality number of 591. Tony in this reality successfully brought together the Avengers to permanently end the threat of Thanos on the universe. Because of the Avengers accomplishing that insane feat of strength and saving the entire universe from the threat of Thanos, alien races of said universe rewarded the Earth and its heroes with advanced alien technology, allowing the Earth to become a utopia. Tony himself would start to lean more into his mystical side with all the extra time he had after saving the universe, eventually becoming the Sorcerer Supreme and being able to solve further conflicts without needing to do any kind of real fighting. Last I heard, this Tony was living youthfully comfortable at 126 years old. This isn't the only Tony to become the Sorcerer Supreme, but he is certainly one of the most accomplished. Number 1, Earth X Venom. In the alternate future of Earth 999, basically every single person has powers. Things have gone apocalyptic, and in an act of vengeance, the Venom symbiote bonded to the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, May does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced and honed spider sense, which was something the symbiote was never expecting to happen. Venom and her father Spider-Man go on to join the superpowered police force and fight crime and supervillain threats together. She eventually, after the death of Death itself, goes on to be recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers, plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers, plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy, and it is believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain even more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this character. She's one of the coolest looking versions of Venom while also being one of the most capable.
At number 10 is Red Tornado. Thank you to Sunstar808 for suggesting this one in the comments of part 1. Red Tornado was basically if Vision and Avatar Aang had a baby. Created by the villainous T.O. Morrow, this android hero's body is powered by a sentient wind elemental named Ulthun. Now, what makes him stand out is, well, he boasts some seriously impressive abilities. First off, that android body of his grants him superhuman durability, stamina, and strength, but his supernatural powers are that he can manipulate wind, allowing him to move at superhuman speeds, fly, and even generate powerful vortexes. He can even transform into a human-looking form at will, so he's basically DC's answer to Vision, y'all. And since he is an android, Red Tornado is also a computer whiz and and a skilled teacher. As Sunstar808 put it in the comments, he's a powerful AI being that's often relegated to a background player, even though its abilities exceed more popular members of the Justice League. At number 9 is Zatanna. Thank you to Karen Starr for this one. Zatanna is one of the unsung heroes of the DC universe who possesses a staggering array of magical abilities. Her mystical prowess grants her dominion over both cosmic and supernatural forces, effectively rendering her as a sorceress supreme. I'm a Marvel fan. Through her unique method of backward speech known as logomancy, she can initiate a wide range of supernatural effects. This includes manipulating the very fabric of reality, altering weather patterns, controlling gravity, and even disintegrating objects with a mere word. Not limited to just a magician's bag of tricks, Zatanna can heal wounds, turn invisible, and reshape molecular structures. Telekinesis, teleportation, and the ability to create force fields further cement her as a formidable hero. She's even delved into dark magic, showcasing her willingness to pay the high cost of such power. Now, despite her astounding abilities, Zatanna's magic often exacts a toll, and she's not without her limitations, particularly in her reliance on speech for logomancy. Still, this magical maven certainly deserves more recognition and appreciation than she tends to get. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate if you did. At number 8 is Superboy. Thank you to Jamie Kane 3847 for this one. Honestly, I didn't really want to bring up Connor Kent, but you guys only gave me like 9 suggestions in the comments. Speaking of which, somebody said the channel should relegate me to being a research boy, so I was determined not to do any research for this video. Thanks, Jacob. Anyways, Superboy, or Con-El, stands as one of the DC Universe's most powerful, underrated powerhouses. Born as a DNA-alien clone designed to replace the fallen Superman, he's got more than just good genes, because we've got his nifty tactical telekinesis, power that forms a force field around him which mimics Superman's abilities like super speed, super strength, flight, and invulnerability. So technically speaking, at least at first, Con-El is simply using telekinesis to mimic Superman's powers. Now let's talk about character development. Superboy has had his share of arrogance issues, particularly thanks to his DNA mix, which includes a dash of Lex Luthor. Over time, he's earned some humility, but that ego can still sneak up and bite him in the cape, causing some messy situations. At number 7 is Raven. Also known as Rachel Roth, she's a superhero who deserves more recognition in the DC universe. Her backstory is a roller coaster of emotions. She's the half-demon daughter of Trigon, a nasty demon who wants to take over the planet. Her mom, Arella, is just a human caught up in this demon drama. Raven's got to keep her feelings in check 24/7 or she risks going full-on apocalypse mode. But here's the thing, she's got a heart of gold buried underneath all that darkness. Despite her demon daddy issues, she's found a second family in the Teen Titans. And boy oh boy does she pack a punch. She can project her consciousness, manipulate darkness, create energy constructs, and even mess with time. The list goes on and on. She can fly, teleport, control fire and electricity. I mean, Raven's got it all. In the words of Chris Bradley, who suggested this entry in part 1, Raven definitely deserves better. She is very powerful. She looks very beautiful and stunning in her costume. I also think that Raven is the DC Comics version of Scarlet Witch. Basically what I'm saying is that Raven is awesome, period. At number 6 is Mr. Terrific. Thank you to Trek Staven 4726, I think. Sorry I butchered your username. Mr. Terrific is both Terry Sloan and Michael Holt, who are DC legacy superheroes who truly deserve more attention. But I can see why they haven't really gotten any, because their superpower is literally just being a Marty Stew. Terry Sloan, the original Mr. Terrific, was a remarkable individual with unmatched athletic abilities, intellect, and unwavering commitment to justice during the golden age of comics. His character serves as an inspiring symbol of what a person can achieve through determination and hard work. Later on, Michael Holt took on the mantle, the modern incarnation of Mr. Terrific, who ranks as the 3rd smartest person on the planet. Not only is he a brilliant inventor and businessman, but he's also the founding member of the Terrifics, a superhero team with unique powers and abilities. Both of these Mr. Terrifics possess an almost too good to be true quality, often seen as Marty Stews because of their extraordinary capabilities. In a world filled with superpowered heroes, Mr. Terrific stands out as the embodiment of unpowered human potential, much like Batman does, except without all the clout. At number 5 is Hitman. Despite his rather grim occupation as a hitman, Tommy's character has depth that's often overlooked. He got a raw deal when he was bitten by a parasite, granting him telepathy and X-ray vision. This upgrade could have propelled him into the spotlight, but sadly, he he remains a hidden gem. His telepathic powers, though limited, gave him an edge in battles. He could sense impending threats, making him a formidable opponent, and on top of that, his X-ray vision allowed him to see through objects and environments, obviously. Tommy's military training equipped him with firearm skills, but he's far from invincible, often being outmatched. Plus, his telepathy came at the cost of chronic migraines, which he tried to alleviate with alcohol, showcasing his very human side. The fact that Tommy hasn't made it to live-action adaptations, not even appearing in the Arrowverse, is definitely a mystery. Perhaps James Gunn can give this underrated hero the recognition he deserves. At number 4 is Metamorpho. Metamorpho is the Element Man, a diamond in the rough in the world of DC superheroes. Imagine having the power to morph your body into any element you desire, from liquid to gas to solid, even toxic compounds. Rex Mason's transformation was triggered by exposure to an ancient meteorite's energy, turning him into a metahuman with a twisty, stretchy, and bouncy physique reminiscent of rubber. He's basically a walking chemistry lab and a living Swiss Army knife with the ability to create gadgets on the fly. But here's the kicker, he's not just about elemental fun and games. Metamorpho packs a punch with superhuman strength and durability. He's a skilled martial artist and has an uncanny knack for aviation and investigation. Yet this elemental hero remains largely unappreciated. He's been a part of various superhuman teams, but he's never quite demonstrated his full potential. And number 3 is Element Girl, who gained her powers by replicating the very incident that gave Metamorpho his abilities, becoming a metamorphite just like him. By the way, this entry, the last entry, was suggested by Trek Extravagant 4726. Thank you very much. Anyways, thanks to Amun-Ra, the sun god of Egypt, she could transform her body into any elemental compound and manipulate it at will. Sadly, her life took a dark turn. After leaving the CIA, she sank into depression due to her transformed appearance, which left her feeling like a freak. She attempted to unalive herself multiple times, but her powers prevented her from doing so. It was only when the essence of being unalive itself intervened that she found relief. She then implored Ra to take away her powers, allowing her to finally find eternal peace. In the end, despite her incredible abilities, depression was her greatest weakness, and it's a reminder of the importance of mental health even for the most powerful superheroes. And number 2 is Doom Patrol. The Doom Patrol is a team of metahuman heroes who often go unnoticed in the vast world of DC superheroes, but they truly deserve better recognition. This unique group consists of individuals who have been shunned by society due to their unusual powers, which have caused them immense alienation and trauma. Led by Niles Calder, known as the Chief, who was actually fired because they suspected him for causing the origin stories of a lot of these superheroes to begin with. The Doom Patrol faces foes in situations that are downright bizarre, making their adventures stand out among all the other superhero teams in DC. Their lineup includes Beast Boy, who can morph into any animal, Elastigirl, who, her power speaks for itself. Mento, who went back in time to try to prevent himself from taking over the future, super cool, and Robot Man, a former race car driver who now inhabits a formidable android body. In my opinion, the Doom Patrol boasts some of the most potent heroes in the DC universe, and it's high time they receive the recognition and love they truly deserve. Adam Eve, recommended by William Kituri, who technically isn't even a DC character, but you recommended it, and there is a DC crossover at one point, so I'm gonna allow it. As Adam Eve, her main power is subatomic manipulation, meaning that with sheer willpower alone, she can sense and manipulate matter and energy at the subatomic level, essentially reshaping reality. Flight? No problem. Adam Eve alters air density to soar through the skies. Force fields? Yep, she conjures them up using her transmutation powers. And she's even got telekinesis too. Energy blasts? Yeah, she's got that too. And while she commands nature's elements at the subatomic level, rearranging atoms and molecules to transmute matter, her powers don't typically work when used on organic life. You see, mental blocks limit her abilities, but extreme emotional moments can shatter those barriers, allowing her to unleash her power on organic matter. But for someone who can allegedly rearrange atoms on a molecular level, she doesn't always seem to be using it most effectively. She could take out whoever she wanted by, say, turning the air in your lungs to ammonia. Let's get real. Even with the cap on organic life, she should still be way more OP than she's depicted.